Thank you very much for inviting me to this important event. I appreciate very much that you took the time and the energy to celebrate the Adwa victory. It's 117 years now, and it's an important day. And I think it's important that all Ethiopians and Africans actually should join together and celebrate this important day. The victory of Adwa is not just a victory for Ethiopia, it was a victory against world empire. It was not just a victory against Italian colonialism, it was a victory against all colonialism. It actually is understood like that now, and this realization is coming slowly, and we need to get engaged with it and start realizing how important it is that we must continue the Adwa victory. What I mean by that is the victory of Adwa continues to be important for realizing the unity of Ethiopia and the unity of Africa. There is a unity deficit in Ethiopia. There is also a unity deficit in Africa. It is extremely important that a victory like Adwa, which was won by the unity of all the people, as Menelik said, those who are strong support me with your strength. Those who are weak support me with with your prayers. What it means is that everyone participated and everyone was invited. It's extremely democratic to say everyone should participate to fight those that came to take the liberty, the self-worth, diminish the independence and dignity of an old country like Ethiopia. So it's extremely important that at the moment we are in a difficult situation where civic nationalism or the civicity of the Ethiopians is challenged by regional, ethnic, linguistic, and racial and other divisions. And this is not what Adwa taught us. It is when the people united along civic lines that they were able to come together and fight and win. And when we are divided, what it means is we allow forces that are hostile to Ethiopia to win more, and not win. And this is quite important to realize. Another important point is that the victory of Adwa is also a victory over a world empire. And I like to think that that victory is not just Ethiopia's victory, it's also the victory of Africans the world over. In fact, it is extremely interesting to recognize that it is around the time of Adwa victory that the Pan-African Association was formed by Sylvester Williams, who had direct contact with Emperor Menelik. They communicated before the victory of Adwa, before the war, and after the war. And it is extremely interesting to see how in 1896 Adwa victory came, and in 1897 the Pan-African Association was formed. And from the formation of the Pan-African Association, then came in 1900 the Pan-African Congress. It's extremely interesting that in the Pan-African Congress, Haiti and Ethiopia were also represented together. And it's quite fascinating how at that time Emperor Menelik was in conversation with them and understood that it is important that the people who are enslaved and from outside Africa and so on need to be liberated, and he stood by that very strongly, and which is quite interesting for all of us. He was a great strategic thinker, actually, as a leader, Emperor Menelik, and I think we should appreciate and recognize that connection he built with the diaspora at that time, and the Pan-African Congress is something we must appreciate and recognize. The other important point of the Adwa victory is its contribution also to the African National Congress in South Africa. The South African African National Congress was not formed by just people who want to do politics. It was formed mainly by clergymen, people, pastors, and the first formed what they called the Ethiopian Church of South Africa. In 1892 they formed that church, and the first pastor of that church was called John Langa Bilele Dube, and he was a pastor first who wanted church independence, church pride for black people, and race pride for black people, and before political independence. And in fact, it's after the church independence they went to political independence, and Ethiopia was extremely important in this realization from church independence to political independence, and the Adwa victory was part of this important phenomenon. So I consider Adwa victory, the Pan-African Congresses, and the first liberation movement, the African National Congress in South Africa, are almost as a triple helix. They joined together. They reinforced each other. At a time where there was no internet, there was no communication, they communicated the spirit. So what Ethiopia provided them was a spiritual public good, a spiritual public good of self-worth, self-esteem, pride, and self-reliance, and liberation. Liberation from colonialism, liberation from domination. That's what it provided, and it's extremely important that we recognize this achievement, and that's why I say now, very important, the dignity deficit is not over, the unity deficit is not over, the liberation deficit is not over, which means Ethiopianism, which was providing the spiritual public good through Adwa victory and others, is still necessary for building Pan-Africanism. In fact, before Pan-Africanism was Ethiopianism. Ethiopianism in the 18th century, 19th century, until the 20th century represented Pan-Africanism. And now what it represented was, it represented the notion of self-worth, dignity, unity, the ambition to unite, and independence, self-reliance. And it really gave these powerful ideas, and it continues to do it now that we have the African Renaissance. It means Ethiopianism is extremely important to provide the notion of the African liberation and Renaissance and unity. So I think for all these reasons, just to summarize, for the unity of Ethiopians, for the unity of Africa, for the Renaissance of Africa, for the liberation of Africa, we need Adwa victory to continue. And that's what I say, Adwa victory continues so that we can unite. And if we continue to remain divided, we will lose. If we unite, we'll win. And Adwa also gives us the symbolic meaning of victory, and victory and victory. Thank you very much.
Okay.